So what if one of the biggest assumptions in all of Christianity is just plain wrong? It's a huge question, and it really gets to the very heart of how we read the entire Bible.
I mean, really think about that. We read all these prophecies about a world filled with peace and justice and restoration, but what if those aren't just, spiritual metaphors for what heaven is like? What if they're describing a literal physical kingdom that's still on its way?
And this is where it gets really serious. There's a pretty common idea out there that the church has simply taken the place of national Israel in God's grand plan. Okay, fine. But if that's true, what do you do with all those specific, incredibly detailed promises God made to Israel over and over all through the Old Testament?
And that leads to the question that hits home for you and for me. If God can change his mind or, reinterpret a core set of promises he made to one group, well, what about the promises he's made to you? Does that make everything a little shaky?
To really figure this out, we have to go back to the source, back to what God actually promised national Israel. And we're not talking about vague, fuzzy spiritual ideas here. These were incredibly specific, physical, real-world promises.
A perfect place to start is the Davidic covenant. God promised King David 3 things, and he put the word eternal on all of them: an eternal house or lineage, an eternal kingdom, and an eternal throne. This wasn't a maybe. It was a divine contract, a permanent promise tied directly to his family and the nation of Israel.
And the prophets? Oh, they took this idea and just ran with it. Isaiah comes along and describes a future ruler who will sit on that exact throne, the throne of David, and establish a government of endless peace. This isn't some throne up in the clouds. It's a specific, earthly one with a real history.
And the vision just keeps getting bigger and more concrete. The Old Testament paints this amazing picture of the future, one where this king from David's line rules over all nations, where Jerusalem becomes the teaching capital of the world, and where peace is so total that even the animal kingdom is restored. Lions and lambs, the whole thing.
So here's the reality check. Have we ever seen this world? Has there ever been a time of total global peace with one king ruling from Jerusalem over everybody where nature itself is healed? The answer, pretty obviously, is no, not even close.
So, what happened? What gives? Well, usually you hear one of 3 explanations. The first is that God just canceled the whole deal because of Israel's disobedience. The second is that none of it was ever meant to be taken literally, it's all just spiritual symbolism. And the third, which is probably the most common view, is that the church just inherited all those promises, effectively replacing Israel in the story.
But is that what the New Testament actually says? Let's do some investigating. Because if the promises to Israel were suddenly null and void or transferred over to the church, you'd think Jesus and the apostles would have made that crystal clear, right?
But when you look at what Jesus says, he does the exact opposite. He tells his disciples straight up that in the future, they will sit on 12 thrones. And what will they be doing? Judging the 12 tribes of Israel. He doesn't say the church or the new spiritual Israel. He names the literal national tribes.
And hey, let's not forget the announcement to Mary. The angel Gabriel didn't say Jesus would have a symbolic throne in people's hearts. He said Jesus would be given the throne of his father David and would reign over the house of Jacob forever. That's the very specific language of the Davidic covenant, being confirmed right there at the start of the New Testament.
Okay, now we come to what might be one of the most critical moments in the whole Bible on this topic. Jesus has died. He's been resurrected, and his disciples finally get to ask him the one question that's been burning in their minds. Lord, is now the time? Are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel?
Now listen, if they were fundamentally wrong, if this whole kingdom for Israel idea was off the table, this was the perfect moment for Jesus to set them straight. But he doesn't. He doesn't correct what they were expecting at all. He only corrects their obsession with when it would happen. He basically says that hope is right, but the timing isn't for you to know.
So if Jesus himself seemed to confirm their hope, what about the Apostle Paul? The guy who wrote most of the New Testament and was the great theologian of the church. Well, let's turn to his definitive statement on this in the book of Romans.
Paul doesn't beat around the bush. He knows what people are thinking, so he just asks the question himself, point blank, so there can be zero confusion. Has God completely rejected his people, the nation of Israel?
And his answer? It's about as emphatic a no as you can get in the original Greek. By no means. It is an absolute, unconditional rejection of the whole idea that God is done with national Israel.
And to explain it, Paul gives us this brilliant picture of an olive tree. See, the common misconception is that the old tree, Israel, got chopped down, and a brand new tree, the church, was planted in its place. But that's not what Paul says. He says the original tree, representing Israel's covenants and promises, is still standing, and believers from other nations, the Gentiles, are like wild olive branches that get grafted into that existing tree. We get to share in its life. We don't replace the root system, we're supported by it.
So when you put it all together, the Old Testament promises, Jesus' own words, and Paul's crystal clear teaching, we can actually arrive at a pretty solid final verdict on this whole question.
And this right here is the theological bottom line. Paul finishes his whole argument with this absolute mic drop of a statement. The gifts God gave and the calling he placed on Israel are irrevocable. That means they can't be taken back, can't be canceled, can't be reversed, period.
So, the verdict is in. The promises God made to national Israel have not been canceled. They have not been replaced by the church, and they have absolutely not been forgotten. They are simply waiting for their fulfillment.
And this is exactly why this whole thing matters so much to you and me today. Because if God keeps his incredibly specific centuries-old promises to Israel, even through all their ups and downs, then you can be absolutely certain that he will keep his promises to you. His faithfulness to them becomes the very anchor for your own hope.
But of course, this leaves us with a gigantic question. If that amazing kingdom promised to Israel is still in the future, when on earth does it happen? And what does that mean for us, living right here and right now?
Well, we are going to dig into that exact question in part 2 of this explainer. So I hope you'll join us next time as we ask the question, are we already in the kingdom?